other part of this, the other piece to this that's really important, is this establishing authentic faith, which I love the Cayce's view of Cayce reading's view of this, because he says, real faith is never blind faith. And people hear the word faith all the time and they think that it means blind faith, just to believe in something without investigating it. But that's not faith at all. And the yogis would never, ever, ever demand that or mandate that at all. They want you to investigate truth. They want you to look into it. But it's a reliance on the metaphysical based on experiences. And that's the key thing, is you have to be doing things in your life to cultivate these experiences. And probably the most organic way to do these is studying your dreams and meditation. Those are two fantastic things to do, and one builds on the other. And then, as the readings say over and again, using persistency and consistency. And that's right out of the yogic textbook. The lamas and the sages also say the same thing, that once you get started, you have to use your will correctly. They think of it like walking the razor's edge, or walking a really thin bridge, rope bridge. And on the rope bridge, you have to have great balance, and you have to stay focused, because if you don't, you'll easily fall off. So here's the first stage for us, is this idea of creating devotion, creating a need, a want of higher consciousness, something other than just your own intellectual mind. And then some Cayce readings. Creation is God's desire for companionship and expression. It's funny, I talk to a lot of people, and still a lot of people, even really, A.R.E. people are the best, no matter where I go, they really are. But even A.R.E. people still feel that God is something that's too big for them, too great for them. The saints can have that, or the great yogic masters might have that, but the fact that you can have God consciousness yourself, this is really what it's all about. To live love is to be loved, to be one with the Father is to be equal with the Father, or the Mother, or the It, however you want to label that. This is one of the revolutionary things that the historical Jesus does, is he comes along at a time when the notion of God was, big, enormous, so enormous that only the high priest can approach God. And if you want to get to God, you give your request to the high priest, and the high priest goes on your behalf, right? The historical Jesus comes along and says, no, God is Abba. God is Daddy. God is close, intimate. And you hear stories of like the great Bengali saint Ramakrishna, who's crying out for God like a baby crying out for its mother. And we'll get to that stage later on. That's a very advanced stage of spiritual consciousness. But that's where we're all essentially headed, is in that direction. And then do not confuse affection with love. Do not confuse passion with love. Love is of God. It is creative. It is all-giving. And I go into that quite a bit, how we really confuse the idea of love, where most of the time love has some conditions associated with it, but when we're talking on the spiritual level, it's really pouring yourself out. And of course, the ego doesn't like hearing that. The ego wants to, as Ram Dass said many years ago to me, the ego is like a really, really clever salesman. It knows exactly what you need to hear, and it'll feed you the line that you need to hear to keep yourself contained. It's not, oppressive, or it's not evil in any way. It's just very clever, very tricky. And it always knows the right game to play and the right sales tactic to use to get you to choose ego, things that will support the ego as opposed to things that will support spirit. Okay, the second part of this first pillar is very, very important. It's probably one of the most neglected parts of this path, of this trajectory. Mahesha, Isha means Lord, but it's the Lord that is within, and the Sha in here is like when you hear the word Swami, someone who is, what we say Swami, it's Swami is someone who knows Isha, someone who knows the internal Lord. And we'll see this again in Ishvara Pranidhana on the bottom here, cultivating devotion to the internal God. So this is the discipline part of learning to discipline your body and your mind and your emotions. And of course, you can see this all throughout the Asian traditions.